Well, folks, I think we've answered the question just how stupid the African National Congress can be. Utterly brain dead, a house on fire. President Cyril Ramaphosa has just signed the death knell for South Africa's economy with this idiotic passage of expropriation without compensation. This law, which violates the Constitution, cannot withstand legal scrutiny. However, people need to take up the case. President Ramaphosa today has signed the bill, which has been in discussion for 5 years, making expropriation without compensation the law of the land. Again, it's unconstitutional. The law seeks to provide for certain instances where expropriation with no compensation may be appropriate in the public interest. It's never appropriate in the public interest to steal people's land. It's something that's been in the works for a number of years, ever since Ramaphosa first got in charge of the African National Congress, and it's going to be a disaster for South Africa. I am not putting a cent of foreign direct investment into a country that steals my property and my land without compensation on no just cause. This will be a political tool used by the party in power of the day, whether it's the ANC, MK, DA, whoever the party is. The party in power will use the threat of expropriation without compensation to silence its critics, lest they have their property taken. And make no mistakes, folks, this is property. This isn't land. And that's what people focus on. It's not about land. Land is part of it. That's the excuse that's being given. The historical injustices. No. Expropriation of property, stocks, bonds, retirement accounts, your cars, your apartments, your homes, all can be expropriated in the public interest, which these days means the coffers of the ANC. Wow. Back in September 2022, then Public Works Minister Patricia DeLille from the Good Party said expropriation was only one acquisition mechanism that, in appropriate cases for the public interest, would enable land reform and redress. Well, there is a mechanism in the Constitution for a redress of land, and it's a process that's been in place since 1994, and the law dates back to 1975. However, the ANC has stolen the money, failed to fund the programs, and given token attention to it. They've ignored it, they've neglected it, and not taken care of the land issue. The resources were there. Now, announcing the signing of the bill, presidency spokesman Vincent Magwenya said the bill, which has undergone a 5-year process of public consultation and parliamentary deliberation, aligns legislation on expropriation with the Constitution. It does not. It's completely the opposite. It violates the Constitution. So these are communists telling us that the law that they've passed is done so that it's in accord with the Constitution, except it's not in accord with the Constitution. Section 25 of the Constitution recognizes expropriation as an essential mechanism for the state to acquire someone's property for a public purpose or in the public interest, subject to just and equitable compensation being paid. We have eminent domain in America. Even that has been abused. So this is akin to eminent domain. So the government declaring in the public interest that it can take your property, but they must compensate you. Now they want to steal your property and give you no compensation. Magwenya added, up until now, expropriation of property had been governed in terms of the Expropriation Act of 1975. So what's the impact? Well, other than the fact that foreign investors are going to go, whoa, I'm sorry, not interested. We've seen this movie before, Zimbabwe. We don't want any part of it. Well, beyond that, what they've just done is they've just, what is with the ANC? Instead of behaving themselves and just moving along, they intentionally are poking the bear. Now they're poking the Don. Do you think there will not be a response from Donald Trump and the U.S. government for this stupidity? The African Growth and Opportunity Act gives South Africa, in my view, illegitimate access to the U.S. market with zero duty, no duty, because you've met certain eligibility criteria for democratic governance and taking care of population, except South Africa has none of that. AGOA's eligibility criteria comes under Section 104 of the Act. Section A, the president is authorized to designate a sub-Saharan African country as an eligible sub-Saharan African country if the president determines that the country does the following. The president, not Congress, the president. Number one, has established or is making continual progress towards establishing, subparagraph A, a market-based economy that protects private property rights, incorporates an open rules-based trading system, and minimizes government interference in the economy through measures such as price controls, subsidies, and government ownership of economic assets. Well, South Africa the government owns most of the economy between all the state-owned enterprises, Eskom, Airports Company South Africa, Transnet, the list goes on and on, Denel, Arms Corps. Yeah, so they don't meet it for that criteria, but we've looked the other way for years. However, protects private property rights. This expropriation without compensation is completely the opposite. It undermines private property rights. This will be used as a political tool to silence critics of the day. Free speech and discourse has died in South Africa with the signing of this bill into law. If the Democratic Alliance does not withdraw from the Government of National Unity over this, there's no hope for South Africa. No hope for South Africa. And if the Democratic Alliance leaves the Government of National Unity over this, there may not be any hope for South Africa. This is the death knell.
Here's one.
Ninepence.
I'm not dead.
What?
Nothing. Here's your ninepence. I'm not dead.
Here. He says he's not dead.
Yes, he is.
Bring out your dead. This is a shameful, disgusting, vile, communist approach. And the world needs to know about it. The world must know, folks. The world must know. YouTube stops your suppression and censorship of this channel. The world must know what the government of South Africa is doing to its people. And it's not doing it to white people. It's doing it to black, brown, and white people. This isn't a race issue. This is a communist government out of control issue. Expropriating property in the public interest. Who determines what the public interest is? Well, the ANC. Are you comfortable with that? I'm not. What say you, South Africa? This is a dark day. Worse than Bella. Worse than NIH. This is a dark day indeed. South Africa isn't only going the wrong direction, it's collapsing in front of our very eyes. It's a house on fire. Or in this case, a feld fire. Man.